I think that we need to have talent trees reworked for PvP. Right now, I think that there's just way too much going on. I do think that talents and abilities, that there's just too much going on to where a base casual viewer can look at it and they don't necessarily what's going on for even their particular class. Kind of going back on what I was saying before, I think that there should be, whenever you jump into PvP, like a base level gear that you just get. I know gimmies aren't what I want for any aspect of the game. I think that's just silly, but I do think that if it's totally different and the gear is the main issue, that I think that, you do your trials, or you do like maybe some training grounds, etc. And then basically here's your base set of gear. What is up, adventurers, and welcome to a brand new ShawnSetGo video. In this one, we're going to be talking about PvP, and I mean PvP in the sense that we want to talk about the things that maybe the issues that are why it's not being played as much as it should be. We're going to kind of hopefully move past the obvious conversation, which happens every once in a while, which is, why is world PvP no longer a thing? I think world PvP will exist if PvP is, popular. I think these are kind of like, if you deal with world PvP, it's a symptom, not necessarily the actual disease. So what's up, everybody? This is Future Sean coming back to you. So thank you so much for clicking on this video. But one thing I wanted to share with you guys real quick is that right now we are sitting nearing 1,500 subscribers, but we are also sitting at only 10% of members subscribed to the channel. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel and you like the videos, you've liked a few of the videos, you come up on your feed, things like that, I urge you to subscribe to the channel so we can start doing bigger and better projects and having a lot more things happen with this channel. Of course, turning on the notifications. I know there's tons of notifications that you get sometimes, but if you could subscribe to the channel, that would mean a lot to me. It'd help to boost this channel, get this channel seen a lot more, and as well as making more content on the channel. So please, after you watch this video, give it a like if you liked it. But of course, please do subscribe if you've been watching these videos and you're enjoying them. This has moved up from like 5% up to 9%. So we are growing. But of course, if you have a second, give us a subscribe. All right. Peace. So let's talk a little bit about it, because this post came up here and it's PvP is dead because it's frustrating and not rewarding. It says, after thinking for a bit, I think it comes to this. Even after more than the other problems that I've complained about many times, about how getting a group of 3v3 is terrible, or how queue times and shuffle are 40 minutes, the complexity of gameplay, etc. The result is frustration and feeling like you wasted your time. What I believe would resurrect PvP for a player base would be a sum of two things: the increase of rewards, even if it's just a few color variances, and far easier to get. I have seen people speak about the prospect of two things: the participatory reward and the actual merit reward, which is at its peak is what we have now with the gladiator mounts, regardless of how you think is now compared to whenever else in time it was before. It is the only one cool moment that true epic most best skilled players on top of the mountain could get in typical vanilla 2004, a legendary weapon. As you look at them with level 10 character mindset, PvP feels like it's molded on this mindset, but the results don't lie. You sum up the queue times, the annoyance of getting groups, the complexity of frustration of PvP. On top of that, you apply the earn your cool mog mount mentality, and PvP is dead. I don't think the many problems with queue times, forming groups, complexity, unless a remake is made, can be solved at all. But the rewards and how easy you get them is absolutely going to change. And I do believe that if the rewards felt like a sense a casual player could get them, the majority of sense PvP would be a lot more popular than it is now. Me, I sit here and I read this. And in short, what they're saying is, the problem is rewards aren't easy enough to access, so people don't feel like accessing them. However, PvP, like anything else, is just amount of participation. Your participation equals a certain amount of rewards you can get, but the scope of what you can earn in just PvP on its own is limited, because it's not going to get you end game PvE gear. It doesn't translate in that way. It's simply going to get you some things a little bit that is like outside of PvE, so that you can get some mogs, some mounts, and of course some gear just specifically for PvP. So I don't think it's the rewards. And I think that even back then, if you go back to as far as classic, some of these will mention classic, at least the ones that I pulled up here, I don't think that gear was the reason why PvP was good, or like the access to rewards was the reason why these things were good. I think it was simply because there was a competitive drive to do better than your fellow neighbor, and that there was a reasonable, like, I guess, a understanding that even if you had gear, there was a certain amount of, I could do better than you, even though you had better gear. Or, for example, my game sense, my knowledge could have me do better in a group battleground setting to where I could do a 2v1, or I could at least, like for BGs, or if I'm doing an arena, my comp could overwhelm you. I think the issue is nowadays that things have been so balanced, I guess, on the PvE front, that there's not a desire within the PvE aspect to do PvP. Personally, if I were to say, like, this is the thing that would change a lot of interest to jumping into PvP, it would be the thing that had me jump into PvP initially which was I could do PvP and it could get me into introductory PvE stuff with the current gear set that I was working on. So to me, I think if I'm doing PvP, or if I'm doing, or vice versa, PvE, that there should be some incentive that allows you to kind of get at least an initial start into the other side. So doing your PvE, doing your Mythic Plus, etc., having maybe a bar at the bottom in your vault, even to be like, hey, here's some PvP gear for you to try it out. It's something along those lines. I mean, it's the same way with time walking. There's not a whole lot of reason to do time walking all the time, but you know that it doesn't take a lot of time, and you can at least sneak in some in there enough to do, say, turbulent timeways to get your mount. So I think the reward system could be sort of incentivized in that way, but I don't think we need to just do gimmies. I've never been a fan of current retail WoW, which is, let's have gimmies that range from champion gear, or I guess veteran gear, to hero gear, even just to make people want to do more PvE than they're currently doing. Like, they're more than just a 2K or 2.5K and push to 3K. And let's incentivize everyone to at least get started, or if you have already started, let's incentivize it beyond that by just giving you the gear to do it, the gear requirements. To me, it was never about that. It was never about that. It was about the prestige. It was about the titles. It was about telling people you were better. And now in classic hardcore, you have the ears, etc. You have things that can incentivize players. I just think it needs to be something else. It needs to be just allowing people to dip their toe into that. But I'm sure there's more than that. Let's look at a bit more here. So this comment says, PvP is dead because Blizzard neglected it for an entire decade. The player base slowly bled out. They finally added things like solo queue, but that was far too little too late. In the most recent dev interview, they have only 12-second segment about the PvP, and the only thing they did was laugh after saying they're not going to participate in it because they don't like PvP. PvP has always been an afterthought, and it's always been neglected more and more as time goes on. PvP was never good because of the rewards. It always had minimum rewards. People just use PvP because they like the arenas in PvP. Exactly. It was never about the reward system. Like, sure, you could say like getting like the wolf mounts and stuff like that. That's cool. You know, like the mounts was part of it because mounts used to be very prestigious. Used to be very rare to have a mount. So having another space that you could get a mount that was not only decent, like it was the coolest looking mount at the time, still pretty cool looking even now, but also faction exclusive mounts, you know, mounts that stood out even to the other faction. So so that to me is something that you can't recreate because mounts are a dime a dozen. You know, there's just so many that are out there. So to me, that's why. Now, if we're going to talk about things that I think might be cool, is that I think that, I mean, I think there could be a whole different move set for how abilities and things like that work for PvP. I'm not a big fan of the system where we have basically buttons at the bottom and we can activate them only if we have like PvP on. Never been a big fan of that. I think it's just a way to basically be like, hey, we're not going to work this into a talent tree because we don't want to add even more. So we're just going to have these separate abilities, and one of them is going to be really essential for you, and the rest are just going to be kind of like optional-ish. So like, to me, it's silly, but to me, that being said, I think that we need to have talent trees reworked for PvP. Right now, I think that there's just way too much going on. nobody understands it, and because PvP's always been kind of an afterthought, and I'll hold on to that comment right there where it says it's an afterthought, and this is because this is primarily a game that isn't based around PvP. It is MMORPG, but even though it's multiplayer, it's not necessarily made for that aspect. I totally get that, but I do think that talents and abilities, that there's just too much going on to where a base casual viewer can look at it and they don't necessarily what's going on for even their particular class. They look at it and they go, what's in general happening? Are they moving? Are they not moving? Have they interrupted this? I think it's not very consumable from a viewing perspective, from a participatory perspective, to the most basic person. At least in, like, say, a Mythic Plus, you could go off of, are they killing this? Are they doing enough damage here? It's understandable to a degree. Maybe with the flashing lights and all that kind of stuff is confusing, but at least it's understandable to go, okay, they're doing this rotation to equal damage. PvP is not like that at all. It's very confusing. For the most part, it's just a battle of attrition where people are just slamming cooldowns until you press the improper set of cooldowns. But nothing else is different. Our comps are the same. Our ability rotations are almost the same. It's just who presses them in the wrong order or takes a risk and say it doesn't pay off, or the things don't line up. The stars do so align, and that, to me, there's too much RNG and then too much just kind of repeating that until you get the bad RNG or I get the good RNG. So that to me, that's where it's not necessarily paying off. But let's look at a little bit more. This one says, what's wrong with PvP? It seems that PvP has been on the back burner for quite some time. Just want to ask this community and propose a question of why. What's wrong with PvP? Is it broken but repairable? What would you do to fix it? The gap between the experienced and new players has become so large. Existing players dwindle and new players do not start. My take is the majority of WoW players rather do content where they can't lose. How much do players do keys where they have 50% or less success, several hundreds of wipes on a raid boss, for example? Is waiting for a healer in PvP different from waiting for a tank in M+, or having an algorithm forming group versus manually making one? So 100% agree with what these first two comments are saying here. I think that 100% jumping into PvP, there's not a whole lot of room here. There's not like this complex rank system or, say, like unrated system where you're jumping in with, say, people of equal experience. I think there's not even enough participants to make that happen. So like, even if you were to do that, I think it would be flawed because queue times would probably be worse for some people. So I don't know if necessarily that work. And then secondarily, which is the mindset of the player base currently, I think that this is one time, never been a big fan of this when people say, oh, it's the player base's fault. I think this is honestly a player base thing, not necessarily something that players can control, but I think that right now players are thinking of, what do you want to invest your time in doing? And looking at it, they go, well, not PvP, because what value am I going to get in the game besides in PvP? Like what else am I going to get out of it? Is this worth my time? And for the most part, especially if things don't go well, say if you're just losing BGs to people who are doing much better than you, then why do it whatsoever? You know, there's just not a whole lot of opportunities there. So my solution, I mean, adding additional solutions as we go along, I always think that there is ways to make things better. And to me, I think it kind of starts with your base dueling. I don't really see people dueling actively anymore. And honestly, with things like Dastardly Duos, you know, being this huge flop, why not implement ways to for players to do dueling, you know, as time passes? You know, like, I mean, like looking at Dastardly Duos as a flop and looking at the Greedy Emissary as a absolute success, for how much people are investing their time into it and jumping into it. Let's implement things that players can do at certain times in the day to just incentivize PvP in small ways. It can be large PvP, it can small scale PvP, it can just be players. If you initiate a duel in this area, so this to me, it like makes these players more involved, and then they go, let me try BG. Let me just see about this. Let me just try this out, and do this. And then other thing is, if someone's jumping into PvP for the first time, let's put them in with players of a higher rating. You know, let's put them in some players where they can, I guess, sort of be carried for a little bit, maybe, or just make it to where, like, hey, you're in a new group. Let's have this rank system that kind of works to help new players get involved in rated or matches that are closer to their skill level currently, etc. Something along those lines. I do think there's systems that could be implemented, both small and large, is what I mean. Like, you can go all the way up to the just BGs and doing those things, but you also do things as small as duels. And I think it's always been about the competitive aspects and not necessarily the rewards. So let's talk some more about some of the things that I think people are concerned with. So this one says, is the PvP in this game community really that brutal and discouraging? What does retail have going for it? Newbie here just reached 70. I saw some posts about how PvP in this game is dead and extremely unfun. Seeing a lot of posts about PvE group communities being really toxic. Let's see. The leveling was a little bit fun, not the greatest, but it was all right. I see a lot of people just posting about how much they drag the game as opposed to how much fun of the fun aspects of it. Wanted to know about the retail version of the game. Unless I'm missing something, is it because maybe it's because I haven't bought the latest expansion of War Within. Like, don't get me wrong, the gameplay is fun. Actively seems all right. In principle, there's just something bugging me about the way people are talking about the community in terms of player versus co-player activities. I mean, PvE, PvP, right? I mean, like, I don't really know that PvP really has a big enough community to, I guess, to be good or bad. And I think PvE gets this reputation of being toxic because people will remember the negative more than they do the positive in general. But I think overall, PvE is fine-ish. At least I mean that I think that most people are on the same page. I think that less often in my comments in my videos, I see people going, you know, you don't pay my sub, so I will continue to act this way, and everybody else is mean. You know, I think most people are on the same page about what you're supposed to be doing. I just think that's hard to approach for the brand new player. This comment says, PvP is super fun and addicting, and it's what kept me sub for the last 10 years. Sadly, PvP is basically dead until level 80. Gearing is the easiest part. Put a weekend into grinding, you'll get on par with the best gear in the game, aside from a few sockets. Balance is the best it's been for many seasons. Some people get turned off because there's a few add-ons that are basically needed to perform the base level arena specifically. BGs, you can YOLO it. And let's not forget, I mean, I've done arena, I've done BGs, I have participated in PvP. Back then, even, it was a pain to have so many additional buttons so you can target certain things and CC certain things. So it was pretty brutal to have like that many buttons. And I can't imagine what it's like nowadays, considering that there are so many classes with so much button load. It's just that people have been playing arenas for now 15 years. The core concept of gameplay hasn't changed, but changed much, so they will have tons more experience than you. I would say, yeah, it hasn't changed much, but in the sense that it has been overwhelming for such a long time that I don't think there's been any effort to make it to where it's more approachable for a brand new player. I think it's always been kind of, you really need to understand your abilities, and as buttons get more and more complex and have so many passes behind them and have so many layers to them, it gets less and less approachable to that. But PvP as a core concept hasn't really changed. That's true. But it's not impossible for someone new to PvP to learn and compete with the best. You just need to put the time and effort to learn the game and not be discouraged when you fail at first. And this kind of goes back to the first part where we're talking. I think that, yes, it's not really rewarding, but also when you jump in and it's like, imagine like just jumping into Mythic Plus for the very first time and you're jumping into like a 13. It's just not like, it's not going to be approachable for just a large portion of the gamer population, unfortunately. Well, all of us are old, so like, what do you expect? Also, I wanted to include this part, this last one. This one's by Educational Till 605. This one is really in depth. I'm just going to kind of like summarize the last bit here, but I don't want to diminish their efforts here. They definitely put a little like a more complex items here. But at the end here, they mention what needs to happen. So let's bring back to, true PvP templates or tighter gear normalization, or allow easier gear catch up through random battlegrounds, reward participation, and let players improve by playing PvP. To me, I started to fall off on PvP. The reason why I want to mention this, because the reason why I started to fall off on PvP is honestly, once like resilience was a thing. So like to me, that's when like it was definitely like I was doing only PvP, and then then PvP or PvE was kind of like going up, and then it kind of was an intersection, right? Once resilience was a thing, I couldn't stand it. And there's been many systems, many iterations of what resilience is. For those of you who don't know, resilience is basically like damage mitigation, I guess, in short, right? I mean, I can't remember. My brain's kind of like foggy about it right now, but I think that's what kind of made it unfun to me, is that it wasn't about statting like yourself maybe differently. It was about it was about focusing on a totally new talent that you could only access through PvP gear, and you would go from losing until you got your first set, and then it's like, okay, I am losing a lot less now. And so now I can actually participate. And so literally the process was losing until you had a full set of gear, as opposed to, okay, I'm doing well, but because there's like, maybe I don't have as much crit I was gonna need, or I focused a lot on getting my hit rating up. Whereas PvP gearing, there's only a certain amount of hit that you really actually need. So I think that was the issue before, is that it was more about like statting things specifically. Whereas now it's like you need you have to reach a benchmark of stats before you can actually even participate reasonably. So to me, that's what made me fall off. But in what it's saying, I think that a lot of people are in agreement that gear is like the main thing, that you have to get past that gear hurdle, as opposed to doing low level in PvE, let's say doing delves to getting the base level gear. Okay, now you're at the minimum benchmark. PvP, you just kind of like suffer and sulk through it until you're there. Now, does it take long? No, I don't think it takes forever, but a lot of people, they kind of look at that and they get very discouraged immediately. So, and then the last thing right here where it says reward participation and let players improve by playing PvP. I think that for the most part, kind of going back on what I was saying before, I think that there should be, whenever you jump into PvP, like a base level gear that you just get. I know gimmies aren't what I want for any aspect of the game. I think that's just silly, but I do think that if it's totally different and the gear is the main issue, that I think that, you know, you do your trials, or you do like maybe some training grounds, etc. And then basically here's your base set of gear, right? Something like that, I guess. So where it's like, okay, here's your participatory reward. Everything else you do beyond that, it's up to you. What do you know? What do you think? Maybe I'm totally off. I haven't done PvP in a very long time, but I do see the issues that do approach, and I do miss doing PvP in general. So let me know in the comments, like, what do you think are the main things that's holding back PvP as we know it? Of course, what do you think are the solutions that could be implemented to allow players to jump into PvP? Because, I mean, just think about it this way. If you're somebody who PvPs and you're like, we really need to improve the system, it would benefit anybody doing PvP to have brand new players in the system who are terrible at it, so you can totally destroy them. It would do you some good, because it gets you, it makes it stimulating. It makes the game mode fun. That's why World PvP is fun. I mean, World PvP is the most fun when it's a one-sided battle and you're on the winning side. So I think it's interesting and it's fun when you have people dueling outside of cities, or you have people invested in that aspect of the game, because I think that people learn their classes better. You know, talking about single blood rotation and PvE all the time, I think that these things come into place because PvP isn't as popular. You want to learn your talent trees and you want to learn your character much more when you're doing PvP, because you want to know what this does specifically to another player. It's not so important whenever it's just like, okay, well, I just need to deal damage to this, so I just need to press slam keys. Well, I'm a warrior, so I don't know how much value that has. But with that being said, I've gone on long enough about this. Of course, let me know in the comments, like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the page while you're at it. We are on our way to 1,500 subscribers, and I am super excited to be here, and I really do appreciate everyone providing the support that you have in these past months. But as for always, catch you on the next one. Peace.